Hello guys, good afternoon everyone. Welcome back once again to the online classes at APPA Public School. Okay, students, in the previous class we discussed the major part of this chapter, that is socialism in Russia or Russian Revolution. Yes. Okay, initially we discussed about the liberals, radicals and conservatives. Yes, the liberals wanted a nation which tolerated all the religions. This concept you have to keep in your mind. Second, radicals. Yes, radicals wanted a society in which government should be based on the majority of a country's population. And third, conservatives. Yes, conservatives believed that the past had to be respected and change had to be brought through the slow process. So these three concepts you have to keep in your mind to write about the liberals, radicals, and conservatives. Yes, and later we discussed the most part that about the Russian Revolution, that the coming of socialism in Europe. Yes, and here the person who played an important role, that Robert Owen. Yes, Robert Owen from 1771 to 1858. Yes, so Robert Owen, he was an leading English manufacturer who sought to build a cooperative community called what? A cooperative community called New Harmony in Indiana at US. But others were felt that, yes, others felt that the cooperative community could not be built or should not be built. They demanded that the government must and should encourage the cooperatives. Yes, for example, or for instance, Louis Blanche. Yes, Louis Blanche wanted a government to encourage the what? Encourage the cooperatives. Encourage the cooperatives by replacing the capitalist enterprises. And these cooperatives were to be an association of people where they together, yes, where they work with the together and divide the profit. Yes, they work with the together and divide the profit work done by ANA members. And later here SPD party, Socialist Democratic Party, SPD party. Yes, so here workers in England and Germany, they began forming association for better living and fight for a better living and working conditions. Yes, and here what happened? SPD party. Yes, in Germany, all these associations were closely associated with the Socialist Democratic Party. And today we'll continue the next part of this chapter, that is Russian Revolution. In that, economy and society of Russia, socialism in Europe, and a turbulent time, means a critical time, the 1905 revolution. Yes. Okay. Even see here. Finally, yes, socialism or socialists took over the government in Russia through the October Revolution and even the fall of monarchy in February 1917. Yes, the fall of monarchy in February 1917 and the October events are normally called as a what? Normally called as a Russian Revolution. Yes, and say, how did this happen? Yes, how did this happen? And what were the political and socialist? What were the political and social conditions during the Russian Revolution? Yes. Okay, and we discussed that in the year of 1914. Yes, in 1914, Tsar Nicholas II, King of Russia. Yes, in 1914, Tsar Nicholas II ruled the Russia and its empire. Yes, not only yes, Russia and its empire, besides yes, besides the territory around the Moscow and Russia present day, it including Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, parts of Poland, Ukraine, and Belarus. And even it stretches to the Pacific and comprises Central Asian states like Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. And the majority of religion, Russian Orthodox Christianity. Yes, Russian Orthodox Christianity was the major religion here, which was out from the Greek Orthodox Church. And even the Russian Empire, it includes the Catholics, Protestants, Muslims, and Buddhists. Yes, so these are the things what we discussed in the earlier class. Today we are going to start with this point, economic and society. Yes, we'll continue with this economy and society of Russian Revolution. Okay, see here, at the beginning of the 20th century, yes, at the beginning of the 20th century, yes, at the beginning of the 20th century, a vast majority of the Russia's people, yes, a vast majority of the Russia's people were agriculturists. Means they were completely dependent on the what? They were completely dependent on the agriculture. Yes, and see about 85%. Yes, about 85% of Russia's population earn their living from the agriculture. Yes, earn their living from the what? Earn their living from the agriculture. So that the highest proportion, or this was the highest proportion in most of the European countries. And for example, in France, yes, for example, in France and Germany, for example, in France and Germany, the proportion was 40 to 50%. Yes, 40% to 50%. Where in France and Germany, for example, in France and Germany, this proportion was 40 to 50%, or 40 between 50 percentage. Means in the empire, which empire? In the Russian Empire. Yes, in the Russian Empire, cultivators produce the goods. Yes, cultivators produce the goods for the market. Yes, produce the goods for the what? Produce the goods for market, and as well as produce the goods for their own needs. Yes, in the empire, what happened? In the empire, cultivator produced the goods for the market and as well as for their own needs. So that reason, Russia was a major exporter of food grain, or major exporters of a grain. Then the question is that here, why they called Russia as a major exporter of grain? So because most of the industry was found in a pocket, means most of the industries were found in a Russia. Yes, most of the industry was found in a Russia, or in the found in pocket. And see the prominent industrial areas in Russia. Yes, the prominent industrial areas in Russia were Saint Petersburg and Moscow. Yes, the prominent industrial areas in Russia were St. Petersburg and Moscow, and many factories or the industries, yes, many factories were established in the year of 1890. Yes, many factories were established in the year of 1890 when the Russia's railway network, because to import and export the goods, when the Russia's railway network extended, then a foreign investment began to be increased. Yes, sir. The foreign investment began to be increased. When the foreign investment began to be increased, the production of coal, yes, the production of coal was doubled. Yes, the production of coal was doubled. As a result, the iron and steel industry production, yes, iron and steel industry production was quadrupled. Doubled means it was doubled only 2 times. Quadrupled means 4 times. The iron and steel industry production began to quadruple. Because of what? Because of extension of railway lines or railway network of Russia. So that reason the production of coal began double, and iron and steel industry production began quadrupled. Yes, and see, even most of the industries were private property of industrialists. And so here, government supervised. Yes, the government supervised a large number of factories. Government supervised a large number of factories to ensure a minimum wage or minimum salary, minimum wages and limited hours of work. So government made a rules, yes, where they have to follow it. Means the private property industrialist must and should follow. But yes, but the private industry inspectors were broke down all these rules and regulations. For example, in a craft units and mill work, in a craft units and a small mill work or in a small workshop, the working day was sometime 15 hours. Sometime 15 hours as compared to 10 to 12 hours in the factories. 10 to 12 hours in the factories. Not only the difference in working conditions, even the accommodations, means facilities also varied from rooms to dormitories. Yes, means dormitory means sleeping rooms. Yes, so there were also a lot of differences. So here the working day was sometimes 15 hours, whereas in major factories the working hour was 10 to 12 hours, and accommodations also varied from rooms to dormitories. Yes, and even here the workers were divided a social group. They began to divide the workers social group, and most of the workers, yes, and those who had a strong link with the villages, yes, with the villages, and others were settled down their life in the cities. Yes, others were had a strong link with the villages, and some of them were settled themselves in the cities permanently. And even here the workers were divided on the basis of skill. Yes, the workers were divided on the basis of what? On the basis of skill. Here, a metal workers, yes, Petersburg, they recalled themselves. Yes, so here they recalled themselves as a aristocracies among other workers. Means they called themselves as a good, yes, aristocracies among the other workers, and their occupation required a separate training or a special training and special skills. They called themselves who? What workers? Some of the workers were called themselves as a what? Themselves as an aristocracies. Yes, and despite of all these things, the women's were made up about 31% of population by the year of 1914. And even after making 31% of women, they were paid less than the whom, less than the men. Yes, a lot of work is given, a lot of work was given to the women, but even though they were paid less than the whom, less than the men. So despite of all these issues, despite of all these problems, the workers did unite and strike work, means stop the work when they stop the work, when they disagreed. Yes, when they disagreed with the employers about dismissals and working conditions, means changes in the working conditions. And these kind of strikes, yes, initially or frequently took place in textile industry during 1896 to 97, and later it took place in the metal industry during 1902, and later it began to increase, go on increasing the strike between industrial private owners and workers. And in a countryside, means in the villages, yes, in a countryside, most of the lands were cultivated by the peasants, and those lands were mainly belongs to the nobles, yes, who were enjoying the privileges. Yes, nobles, church, Orthodox church people, and crowns. Yes, those lands were cultivated by the whom? By the peasants. But there were no any kind of a profit to whom? To the peasants. Only a low wages where they were giving to them. But anyhow, nobles or Orthodox Church and others, yes, nobles, they got their power and position through giving a services to the home, to the Tsar Nicholas II. And initially, the peasants, yes, initially the peasants respected the nobles and fight for them against the king. But yes, but when the peasants in Russia, they demanded the land belonging to the noble to be transferred to the peasants, the nobles were disagreed with the peasants. When they disagree with the peasants, they were refused to pay the rent. Who? Peasants. The peasants were refused to pay the rent. We will not pay the rent. And when they were forcing them to pay the rent, even, yes, the peasants were murdered the landlords. They were murdered the landlords. And see, by the 1902, this was spread in a large scale in South Russia first. Initially, it was spread in South Russia, and by the year of 1905, it was spread all over the Russia. Means murdering the whom? Murdering the landlords. This they began to kill. And see, next, the part of this chapter is socialism in Russia. So here, all the political parties in Russia, yes, all the political parties, I hope understood this part. All the political parties in Russia were illegal. So here, all the political parties were illegal in Russia before 1914. Yes, before 1914. And see here, the Russian Socialist Democratic Workers' Party. Yes, the Russian Socialist Democratic Workers' Party. Yes, the Russian Socialist Democratic Workers' Party, which was founded in the year of 1898. By whom? By the socialist. By the socialist, yes. By the whom? By the socialist who respected the ideas of Karl Marx. Because Marx argued that workers had to overthrow the whom? Workers had to overthrow the capitalist and rule of private property. So that reason they established the Russian Socialist Democratic Workers' Party in 1898 by the socialist. By the whom? By the socialist who respected the ideas of Karl Marx. And even they set up a newspapers, mobilized the workers, and organized a strike to fight against the king. Who was the king? Tsar Nicholas II. Or they started a fight against the nobles, Orthodox Church people, crowns, and etc. Yes, and see, some of the socialists, or some of them, or some Russian socialists felt that the Russians' custom of dividing the land made them natural socialists. So here, Russia could become more quickly. Yes, Russia could become socialist more quickly than the other countries. So that reason they formed socialist revolutionary party in 1900. Yes, socialist revolutionary party, which was founded in 1900. And this party, yes, this party struggled for the peasants' rights and demanded the land belonging to the noble to be transferred to the peasants. Means they supported to the whom? Supported to the peasants. But during this time, Vladimir Lenin, yes, the leader of Bolshevik party, yes, see here, Lenin felt that the peasants group not one united. Yes, the peasants were not in a one united group. Some of them were very rich and some of them were very poor. Some of them were highly educated, and some of them were not educated. Yes, and some of them were very what poor. Okay, yes, some of them were very poor and some of them were not poor, means rich. Yes, but here this party supported to those socialist peoples, and later the party is divided over a strategy that Bolshevik party and Menshevik party. The Bolshevik party was led by Lenin. Yes, the Bolshevik party was led by the whom? Led by the Lenin, whereas the Menshevik party was led by other socialists. Yes, and the Menshevik party was open to all. Bolshevik party, Lenin made some rules and regulations where the people has to follow it. Yes, Lenin, yes, the leader of Bolshevik party was a Lenin. So you should keep in your mind. And next, that is a turbulent time, the 1905 revolution. Yes. A turbulent time. Yes, the 1905 revolution. A turbulent time, the 1905 revolution. So here, by the beginning of the 20th century, yes, by the beginning of the 20th century, Tsar Nicholas II, king, yes, by the beginning of the 20th century, Tsar Nicholas II was not subject to the parliament. Means he was not ready to give a constitution or to form a parliamentary form of a government. He was not subject to a parliament. But liberals in Russia, yes, liberals in Russia campaigned or arranged a strike to end this state of affairs, which was conducted by the whom Tsar Nicholas II. So that reason they together work with the whom Social Democrats and Socialist Revolutionaries. They work with the peasants and as well as workers. They work with the whom peasants and as well as workers during the 1905 revolution. They demanded a separate constitution. Not only the Social Democrats and Social Revolutionaries, even the Muslim dominated areas by Jadidists. Yes, Jadidists who wanted a modernized Islam. Yes, who wanted a modernized Islam to lead their societies. Means even the Jadidists also wanted some changes in their Islam. Yes, so that reason they too began to fight against the king. And see, in this part, the important is that the year 1904. The year 1904 was particularly worse to the Russian workers. Yes, the year 1904 was particularly worst for the Russian workers. Why it was worst? Because see here the prices of the essential good, yes, prices of the essential goods rose dramatically. Means suddenly they increased in the price of essential goods like bread, yes, wheat, jowar, or etc. Yes or no? So that here the year 1904 particularly worst for the Russian workers because the prices of the essential goods rose dramatically and the real wages was declined by how many? 20%. Yes, prices of essential goods rose dramatically and the wages, yes, the wages was declined by 20%. Means if they were getting 10 rupees of salary, then they began to get 8 to 7 rupees of salary. Yes, 8 to 7 rupees of a salary. Yes, prices of the essential good increased dramatically and the real wage was declined by the 20%. Not only the real wage, even not only the wage, even the members of workers association also increased. Yes, see here yes, four members of assembly of Russian worker, four members of assembly of Russian workers who supported to the Social Democrats and Socialist Revolutionaries. Yes, the four members of the assembly of Russian workers who supported the Social Democrats and Socialist Revolutionaries, they were dismissed from the Putilvo iron work. It was an industry. Yes, they dismissed from the Putilvo iron work and they called for an industrial action. Means take action over on whom? On those four members of assembly of Russian workers. Yes, they began to take action on those over the next few days. Yes, over the next few days, over 1,10,000 workers. Yes, yes, over the next few days, over 1,10,000 workers at St. Petersburg. Yes, how many workers? 1,10,000 workers at St. Petersburg went on strike. Yes, went on strike by demanding three conditions. Yes, by demanding reduction in a working day to 8 hours, but earlier it was a 15 hours. Yes, then 10 to 12 hours. Yes, 15 hours and 12 hours. But here, yes, over the next few days, over 1,10,000 workers at St. Petersburg went on strike. They went on strike by demanding reduction in the working day to 8 hours and increase in wages. Yes, increase in wages and improvement in what? Working conditions. Yes, improvement in a what? Improvement in a working conditions. So these were the three demands of the workers. Which was the first demand? They demanded a reduction in a working hours, as working days to 8 hours. then increase in the wages, then third, improvement in the working conditions. So these were the three demands. Okay, so when they organized this strike, there will be a particular person to who lead to this procession. Yes, see here, this procession of workers or the strike of worker was led by Father Gapon. Yes, Father Gapon. Father Gapon. So this procession of workers or strike of workers led by Father Gapon, and they reached to the Winter Palace. They reached to the where? They reached to the Winter Palace, and there it was attacked by the police and the Cossacks. It was attacked by the whom? It was attacked by the police and Cossacks. As a result, yes, here in the Winter Palace, yes, as a result, there were total 100 workers were killed. 100 workers were killed and 300 workers got injured. Yes, 300 workers got injured. Yes, 100 workers were killed by the police and Cossacks and 300 workers were got injured. Yes, and this incident came to be known as a Bloody Sunday. Yes, this incident came to be known as a what? This incident came to be known as a Bloody Sunday. Yes, so this incident took place on Sunday with a full of bloodshed. So that reason they called it as a what? They called it as a Bloody Sunday. How many people were, sorry, how many workers were killed? 100 workers were killed and 300 workers got injured. So when all these things happened, the universities were closed down. Yes, the universities were closed down. Then students staged walkouts, means they came out from the classes, staged walkouts by complaining a civil, yes, by complaining a lack of civil liberties. What lack of civil liberties? Not only the student, even the lawyers, yes, lawyers, doctors, yes, lawyers, doctors, then engineers and middle class workers. Yes, lawyers, doctors, engineers and middle class workers, they formed their own unions of union. They formed their unions of union and started demanding a separate constitution. Yes, they started demanding a what? They started demanding a separate constitution. Yes. Okay, when they began to demand a separate constitution, Tsar Nicholas II, yes, Tsar Nicholas II in 1905 revolution, means here, yes, in 1905 revolution, he allowed to the creation of elected consultative parliament or Duma, the Russian parliament name, yes. He allowed, when in the year of 1905, to create your own parliament. Yes, he allowed to the creation of what? Elected consultative parliament or Duma. Yes, and severely restricted on the political activities during this time when they began to form this. Yes, and see the reaction of Tsar Nicholas II towards to this Duma or formation of parliament. Yes, see here. The first Duma, yes, when they formed it, the first Duma, it was dismissed within 75 days by the king. Who? Tsar Nicholas II. Yes, the first Duma was dismissed within 75 days or within 75 days and formed the second Duma within 3 months. The first Duma was suspended or dismissed by the king within 75 days and started second Duma, means forming of a parliament within 3 months. Within 3 months, and he said that, and even the king did not want to question of his supreme authority by anyone or anybody else. So that reason he changed the laws, as he changed the voting laws. He changed the voting laws and packed up for what? Packed up for the third Duma. Yes, packed up for the what? Packed up for the third Duma with conservative politicians, and he kept out the liberals and radicals, because liberals and radicals were the supporters of social democrats and the socialist revolutionaries, but the conservatives remain stable towards to the king. So that reason he kept with him conservative politicians, and he kept out whom? Liberals and radicals. Yes, he kept out the home outside liberals and radicals. So this is what the today's part, the most important this part is the Russian Revolution. As we discussed, finally what happened here? The socialists took over the Russian government. How? Russian government through the October Revolution of 1917 and the fall of monarchy in February 1917. Just we'll glance over on it. The fall of monarchy in February 1917 and October events are normally called as what? Russian Revolution. Yes. And here Tsar Nicholas started his rule in the year of 1914. Or in 1914, Tsar Nicholas II ruled the Russia and its empire. Russia and its empire, and present day the Russia included Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, parts of Poland, Ukraine, and Belarus. And even it comprises or is stretched up to the Pacific and comprised of Central Asian states, Germania, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. And next, we discuss the economy and society of Russia. Yes. So here, by the beginning of the 20th century, what happened? At the beginning of the 20th century, a vast majority of the Russia's people were completely dependent on the agriculture. So that reason, about how much percentage? 85%. 85% of the Russia's population earn their living from the what? From the agriculture. Yes. And in the empire, cultivator produced the goods for the market and as well as their for own needs. So that reason, Russia was become a major exporter of grain. Yes. Why it was become an exporter of grain? Because most of the industry was found in the pocket or in their regions. Yes. And the prominent industrial areas were the St. Petersburg and Moscow. And later many industries or factories were set up in the year of 1890 because when the Russia's railway network extended, the foreign investment began to be increased. Yes, as the foreign investment began to be increased, the coal production was doubled and iron and steel industry began to be quadrupled. So this was the thing what we discussed in the today's class. And the next part will continue in the next class. I hope everyone understood. And students, it's my request, please once you go through the textbook. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day.